I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock, and I want everyone in the gallery to know that this is a live council meeting. It is being recorded. So your personal information, including your image, your voice, your names, your opinions, and any other personal information disclosed by you during the meeting is collected by the City of Roslyn under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act for the purpose of your participation in this public input session that's coming right up. So if you have any questions about the collection of your personal information, you can contact dco@roslyn.ca. If you do not wish any of your personal information to be collected, please do not join the council meeting. So I am going to have public input come up here, and anyone who wishes to speak to anything on the agenda, you should raise your hand now, your little icon hand there, and then you have 2 minutes to speak. So please be respectful of everyone else's time. And if you don't put your little hand up, I'm not going to be able to see that you're there. So it may take just a couple seconds for us to activate you if this is your first time at public input. And we welcome all the people in the audience there. So thank you for coming. And we'll start with public input. I see we have one hand up, and it is Sue Wrigley. Sue, you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sue Wrigley. I've been a resident of Roslyn for 18 years. I'd like to talk a bit about the reasons for the bear hazard assessment proposal that's on the agenda this evening. As I'm sure you know, Roslyn has been the talk of the area this year with a number of black bears and a grizzly in town and getting into trouble, such as getting into houses. This is escalation behavior that we collectively have caused. Many people in town think we do a good job of managing our compost, garbage, bird feeders, and other attractants, but it's quite obvious that we don't. Providing unnatural food for bears is the wrong thing to do in many ways. It artificially increases the reproductive rate of black bears such that we end up with more bears than a natural habitat would support. Garbage and compost is not necessarily nutritious, and there's the possibility, although remote, that a bear could cause injury to a person. This latter problem is the reason why bears have to be destroyed to keep people safe. And have to be destroyed to keep people safe. That's what they think. And I think most people in town do not want to see bears destroyed. This year has magnified the problem of having too many bears in a small area, with even more bears coming into town early because of the early failure of the berry crop due to the drought and heat. With climate change, this could occur more frequently. Many people also think that we can coexist with black bears, but coexisting is letting them go about their natural habits, i.e. letting them pass through and maybe eat some clover and grass as they pass through. It does not mean providing them easy garbage food for them. As many of you know, I can go on and on about bear behavior, but I only have 2 minutes. There is a bear hazard assessment proposal item on the agenda tonight, and it's time that Roslyn takes this seriously. We have a good group of people behind this, and the way forward is figuring out where we've gone wrong and how we can do better. The road to becoming bear smart is probably the most important part of actually becoming bear smart, and the bear hazard assessment is key. This is where we will learn the most about where the problems in town are. I was part of Bear Aware back in 2005 when we tried this last time, and was very disappointed it didn't go through back then. The roadblock has always been developing and maintaining a bear-proof waste management system, but I really believe that with the will to do this, we can figure out a way to do it. So I'd ask you to please support the proposal for the bear hazard assessment tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak on this? I see India has just joined us. I know she had a little bit of trouble, and I don't know if she wants to speak. Her hand is not up. I'm going to give her just a second because she just arrived. Is there anyone else who has anything they would like to say during public input? Okay, well, maybe India doesn't want to speak, so I'm not going to. Let me just check in. Oh, India, okay, her hand is up. All right, India, you are allowed.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I just hopped on here, so I'm a little bit discombobulated and don't really know what's going on. What is the context of this? Sorry.
That's okay. You've just joined the council meeting, and we just heard from Sue Wrigley on the benefits of approving the proposal to go forward and get a bear hazard assessment. She was talking about the condition of the bears in town, bears in town this year in particular. So I know this is a subject that you're interested in. I thought perhaps you might want to add some comments there. Otherwise, we're going to go on into the meeting.
I think that Sue probably covered most of the topics. She's quite experienced with the bears in Rossland, and would I think she's a good advocate for them. So I'm here in support and just to help organize the bear working group.
Okay, all right, that's great. So thank you very much. And I'm seeing no one else for public input. Let me just run through the list of people here. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the agenda. Andy, and a seconder is Dirk. All in favor of the agenda as it is? Okay. And we have no petitions or delegations. We have some minutes to adopt. This is for the regular meeting held on September 20th. Do I have a mover to adopt those? Janice and Chris, any comments on those? All in favor? Okay. Okay, so now we have a request for council decision. This is on the Bear Smart Community Designation, Bear Hazard Assessment Proposal. So the recommendation from staff is that we provide them with further direction regarding the completion of a bear hazard assessment and obtaining Bear Smart status. The report is in the package. Does anyone have any comments on this and make a motion? Stuart. You're muted.
I got lots of comments, but maybe I'll let someone else make a motion and then I'll launch into them.
Oh, okay. So Andy, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Council approves the proposal for WildSafe BC in the amount of $6,000 to complete a bear hazard assessment. Further, direct staff to include provisions for additional activities related to obtaining a community Bear Smart designation in the draft 22 to 26 financial plan.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Dirk seconds it. Okay. Andy, do you want to discuss your motion?
Yeah, I mean, this is critical as far as I'm concerned. And as Sue pointed out, back in 2005, this issue has been on the table for quite a long time. And although there's been steps forward to try and create a community that is making an effort to try and clean up some of the issues that have caused so many bear problems in town, we still got a long way to go. And this particular season, yeah, it was bad, but it also is indicative of the problems that we have had ongoingly. And it's just exacerbated by the fact that we have a drought, an incredibly hot, smoky summer, and to be honest, probably a large growing population of bears in the area. So yeah, it's important that we move forward. There's some really good examples out there of communities that have done substantial improvements to reduce the attractants and the potential conflicts, and reduce the number of bears in living and dependent on human food or human accessed food anyways. So yeah, I think we need to go forward for sure.
Okay, Dirk as the seconder.
No, I think Andy pretty much covered it. I think we need to do something for sure. So I'm seconding it.
Okay, all right, other comments, Stuart.
I'm very interested in this, and I've done a lot of reading on what would actually be required to address the bear population in Roslyn. And I don't think we need to pay $6,000 to get a report to tell us what we really already know, that we've been through before, and that anybody who's done just a little bit of reading on the Bear Smart websites, on other communities' documents on these sort of issues, there's a whole bunch of things we need to do. We need to get rid of the fruit trees. There's like 30 species that are considered to be attractants to bears. We need to get rid of them. We need to get rid of the chickens. We need to put in communal neighborhood garbage bins rather than doorstop pickup. We need to harass the bears. We need to condition them not to come into town. I mean, other communities do put all these measures in place. The problem is, whenever I talk to people about, would you support all those measures? Well, No, they like their fruit trees. They like their gardens. They like their chickens. They like their curbside pickup. And they don't support all the measures that would be required to actually do this. So yeah, we can pay $6,000 and get a report to tell us what we already know, but I'm just not convinced it's a worthwhile exercise unless the community supports it. And I'd support starting a conversation with the community to make people realize, those significant changes in our lifestyles that would be required to actually do this, and whether people would actually support that. My conversations with people on this issue, which I've had recently and many times over many years, is that people don't. They're pretty happy with the status quo, and the fact that we support a feral bear population and have to kill a few of them that get out of control is the price we pay for the lifestyle that people enjoy here. Yeah, that's my perspective.
Okay, thanks. Let's see, Janice and then Terry.
Yeah, thank you. I think Sue actually hit it on the head in the fact that this really isn't a bear behavior problem. It's a human behavior problem, and it's obviously been important to this community and people in this community. And Sue has been a leader in trying to move this community, obviously since 2005. She felt it was important enough to be involved then. But I am concerned that we are going to spend a lot of money and put a lot of, do a lot of processes to put things in place just to get a designation. And we've checked off some expensive boxes, and it won't necessarily change the human behavior around town. It won't necessarily make a difference because if we can't change the human behavior, we're not going to fix the problem. The bears are just being bears. It's what they do. It's what they've done for a millennium. What people do is what is causing the problem. So, and I guess, as much as I think this is, we've been invested with WildSafe, and I think they've done a very good job. We now have a bylaw officer, full-time bylaw officer, to go around and implement some of the bylaws that we have put in place to minimize attractants. I think there might be some better traction there. It doesn't mean I'm not fully against it, but I'm not fully for it. I'm a little torn about it. I did wonder if staff, I did have a little note here, would this fall under bylaw enforcement and protective services? Because it turns out we have a little bit of COVID money. And if it does, perhaps we can fund this in a way that isn't detrimental to the community. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. So I'm happy to hear what everyone else has to say.
Okay, well, let's have a staff response to that question. Could we use this as some of our COVID and part of the emergency community safety stuff? I'm guessing we can. Brian, are you there?
Yeah, so some of the issues related to, or the activities related to specific bylaw enforcements, we can definitely look at doing that, because anything that has to do with expenditures related to our bylaw officer is fully being covered right now through our COVID Safety Restart Fund. The additionality that we could think about as well as further down the list, there's a contract proposal with Warfield, so we could even use some of those additional funds that we would be getting to cost to cover some of the costs for bylaw enforcement can get redirected into the bear aware activities. So we have a couple of different options to fund this thing that wouldn't fully come out of like just general city coffers. But I think the premise of that staff report and some of the comments made by both Councillor Nightingale and Councillor Spooner is correct, is that the checking the boxes are one thing, and the fundamental change of human behavior in regards to activities undertaken to promote bear problems in the city is really going to be the crux of the matter, which will be developing a strategy. And so I think that even doing the bear hazard assessment will kind of, even if we were to do that, we can kind of, it gives us a high level quality of activities that we can look to kind of focus on core issues that are the big ticket items that would hopefully benefit us as a city, rather than just trying to do it on our own, because third party involvement on this thing I think would be very key from a messaging perspective.
Okay, thanks. Terry, then Chris, then Andy.
Yeah, I much of what Stu said about the town and the people in the town resisting that, I agree and disagree. I think there's you know, the classic bell curve where there's people who are very passionate about doing the right thing, and there's people who are very passionate about making this their own personal zoo, and a bunch of people in the middle who aren't quite sure. I think there's a cultural aspect to this that needs to be addressed. So I think that we need to think of innovative ways of getting the message out to people. The Bear Smart program, I'm all in favor of doing the bear hazard assessment, although I sympathize with Stu's perspective that we could spend $6,000 in different ways, but I think it's an important foundation step to take. But I also think that we should be dedicating some perhaps specialized resources on how would we change the conversation in town here to stop some of the behaviors. I think we've seen the pictures Dirk sent of what's going on at the bear garbage dump, and it's pretty disturbing that there's still some people out there who are a small percentage, I'm guessing, but cause the majority of the problems. So yes to the bear hazard assessment from my perspective, and in addition, I'd like to see some type of social campaign that may fall outside the scope of the Bear Smart piece.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks. Now, I had Chris down next, but Chris, your hand is down. Did you wish to speak or not?
Yeah, I mean, Terry, you kind of nailed it. I, you know, to have a designation of a Bear Smart community, that's, to me, that, you know, that's nice. The $6,000 to get some sort of high level look at how we can address this with our community. We've got a lot of new people in our community, and a lot of them, I think the bears are nice. You know, they just haven't been involved as long as a lot of us have. You know, a lot of the things in the 2005 assessment or the management plan are going to be still relevant today. Bears haven't changed. We can't control climate change. We can't control a lot of the things that are driving the bears into town. You know, the things that we can control is maybe the $6,000 is better spent on more bins, you know, more bear proof bins, so people aren't actually dropping the garbage outside the bin, and then the education part. But there are a lot of people in Rossland, I think, that are going to have to change their way of looking at it.
Okay, Andy and then Dirk.
I'm appreciative of folks getting involved in conversation here. It's nice to hear the perspective, but I'll have to agree with city staff on this one. And Brian pointed out that there could be some substantial structural changes to how we do business as a city as well as a corporation. And to highlight the fact that garbage, and Stu, you pointed out curbside pickup, not to mention coming down the pipe within a year or two, is going to be organics curbside pickup. So, you know, we're at a position right now where those things are going to be critical to an overall plan. And having a third party provide that professional perspective will give us considerably more teeth with our community, because we've gone to the trouble of having, you know, that kind of assessment done. So, you know, and then we're in a position to be able to enforce, but not until then. But I see, you know, the city's responsible for, you know, a percentage or a portion of what's the change it's going to take. You know, the assessment, I think, is critical to that part. And then, as pointed out by our environmental manager at RDKB, Janine said that, you know, education is a big part of the component as well. So we'll get all that information on how to go forward with an assessment like this. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, thanks. And we also have a number of trees on city property that we can take down regardless of how the neighbors feel about their own trees. And there's also a program in Fernie that's a pilot where there's a foundation that's come in and is paying some of the private citizens to replace their trees with non-fruit bearing trees. So there's other options we can look at once we get sort of a plan going. Okay, Dirk.
Yeah, I support this, I think, because a study like this or an assessment like this is going to go deeper than fruit trees and compost and garbage. I think it will tell us in the context, the bear behavior, the bear pathways, the bear corridors, if there are things that the city can do on an operational level to change, that was very loud. Okay. So to change the pathways for the bears, to discourage the bears on a bigger level. And certainly we need to do more with garbage and that kind of thing. To Chris's point, I think more bins isn't the answer. I think bear-proof bins are just like basements, and everybody knows the bigger your basement, the more crap you have. And so I think more bins is just going to, just like we saw up there, that bin is inviting garbage and recycling to go in there. So I think it needs to be a bigger, comprehensive strategy. Oh, and the third thing is I did talk to Matt at the SC, and they are interested in helping to manage this and work with the bear working group. And so that may be an opportunity to shift the funding model somewhat, but I do think we need this.
Yeah, that's great. And India, who's on here, is sort of a leader of that group, but she has a number of people who step forward who also want to be involved once we get some direction to give to them help us. And they would also help the Wild Safe coordinator in the work. And I think a big part of it is education. Janice.
Yeah, I just actually had a question for Andy. Your motion was a two-parter. So the first part was the bear assessment, the bear hazard assessment. The second part was.
Oh,
you're muted.
There's that too. Direct staff to include provisions for additional activities related to obtaining a community Bear Smart designation in the draft 2022-26 financial plan. So, I mean, just obviously the bear hazard assessment will provide lots of input, hopefully, for both staff and citizens. And yeah, I mean, Kathy pointed out one of the activities that we're going to have to do, we've been talking about it for decades probably, is fruit tree removal on city property. That's just one of the targeted issues that's got to be dealt with and beyond. Does that answer that, Janice?
It does. I'm just thinking that, we're sort of giving staff a really blanket motion to do this. I personally might feel more comfortable if we had the assessment and looked at it and understood the scope better and had a more focused second part, which of course we can't do until we get the assessment. Right. So I can support the assessment, but I might like to amend the motion to lose the second part until we have something specific that we can give staff direction on, instead of just saying, but we're just generally going to apply this to everything.
Yeah, I see staff wanting to chime in here. So,
and I'll chair the meeting and call on them.
Thanks, Chair Moore. So the thing about the draft 2022-2026 financial plan is that we would just probably throw in our back of our minds, we'd have some placeholders. So as we go down the process of the bear hazard assessment, we would kind of take a look at that stuff. And there's some things that we can still, obviously, if this is something we're going to spend some time and effort on as a community, then we can proactively look at some of our operational activities and maybe have a little bit more of a focus on the bear aware or the bear conflict side of things. So it's not like a blank check. It's like $100,000 here, $100,000 there. It's basically just in top of mind for staff. So when we make decisions, that we kind of incorporate some kind of consistency with other activities. When we have an opportunity to do something and we're taking down different trees, we can throw a fruit tree in and a fruit tree there if it makes sense in other operational budgets. And that's kind of what that language and that part of that resolution was referring to, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that is that, we have this community group getting started. They may go under the SC now that Dirk has talked to Matt, and that could be a good home for them, but we might need to bump up a small amount of funding, for that group to do their work under the SC or as an individual, and that could kind of fall under that umbrella. I think the specifics will come out later. It's not a blank check, but it is it is something that would, could move this initiative forward. So, and I don't think the community is unteachable. There's an awful lot of new people and they honestly don't know. Like some of them are frightened to death of bears and when they ought not to be. So I think that's part of the education. That's part of the education too. Stuart.
I just think it's presumptuous to think that education is the answer. To think that people are just not aware of what they're doing, and all we have to do is tell them the right thing to do, and they're going to change their ways. I've had many conversations on this issue with a large number of people in our community, and they're not uneducated. They understand. They are making value choices, and I think we've got to be aware that in pursuing this direction, we are attempting, and I'm going to suggest unsuccessfully, to apply idealistic and very justifiable values to people who have a different perspective on the matter.
Yeah, and if you can just reduce some of the attractants, we're in better shape than we are if we just keep it over in season. So the people who are willing to change once they learn more, or once
it'll be a little better.
The bear assessment, the hazard assessment, I think we can't give up hope and say everybody is incorrigible. They're not. There are people who are going to have that different philosophy for sure. Okay, I think it was Andy and then Terry.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that what I've noticed, and I'm sure Stu's making point here to it, is it's not, and it's been pointed out a couple of times that it's so many new out of towners. But I'll tell you, the locals, I'm gonna, some of them lifers have, posted on Facebook that they've got bears in their backyard feasting on the fruit trees, or at this time of year, it's starting to be the mountain ash berries. And of course, the mountain ash is a native tree, and there's no more apples or plums, so it's mountain ash berries next. And it I don't see it just being new folks, new residents. It's very much cultural, and it's pretty endemic. And I think it's going to take some serious change to get people in a different mindset about leaving these attractants and taking photos and nice bears, So yeah.
Okay, Terry.
Yeah, just doubling up on what Andy just said in response to Stu, I think it's a cultural thing too. It reminds me of the vaccination campaign with COVID. There's people out there who they just don't want to listen to the science or the logic behind it. They've got a viewpoint, and I think that is still not a reason to give up on trying to change minds. So win hearts, change minds on that front. So that's why I was suggesting earlier that there might be some different innovative approaches around that culture shift in addition to education. So it's a slightly different take. I don't presume to have what that looks like exactly, but cultural shifts are it's worth trying some different strategies. So I look forward to that committee going to work on that sticky problem.
I think that's a really good point, and it's not a easily solved problem, but it's worth a problem to tackle, if we can. And if we can't, well, then we'll give up. I don't know, but not yet. Okay, I'm going to call the question unless there's anything else on Andy's motion. All in favor? Okay. And opposed? Okay, so it's opposed. All right, thanks. That was a good decision, folks. Now we are moving on to the council decision permissive tax exemption for the years 2022 to 2026, and this is up for adoption. We've been around on this one before. Anyone have a motion to make? Janice and Chris, comments? I'm just going to call the question. All in favor? Okay. Now we have got a council decision request for a decision on our Warfield partnership with bylaw enforcement services contract agreement. And this is that we enter into a contract with the Village of Warfield to provide general bylaw enforcement and related services. Do I have a mover? Andy, and a seconder, Chris. Discussion, Andy?
Great to see collaboration, local collaboration. And also to mention that I can't remember what they call it, legal process. adjudication, is that what they call it? To collaborate with regional district and other close, maybe East and 7 group that would be interested in combining their efforts on that front as well. So yeah, great. Kudos to staff for making this happen.
Yeah, finally. It's been a long time coming. Chris.
Absolutely, same thing. We some synergy between our two communities in that aspect. Us, there's going to be cost savings for us too, but more so synergy in some of the things that we're working on is awesome.
Yeah, great collaboration. Okay, any other comments before I call the question? Oh, Dirk.
Yeah, just a quick question for staff. Is like a 3% admin, is that standard? That's pretty low.
Yeah, we don't expect, I mean, we're basically, the admin on this one isn't gonna be that much because it's mostly about just looking at schedules and making sure that it fits into schedules. But the admin side of things, if Warfield approves this contract, then the Village of Warfield administration would actually be doing way more administration in regards to our bylaw enforcement officer. We just have to make sure that our administration really covers the fact that when we need that person here, that we booked it accordingly and that we look at more logistics. So we're not really doing like a lot of admin on this one really, so it will cover it.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? See, we can share. All right. Request for decision. This is for City Hall December holiday closure for 2021. This is a standard thing that we do every year for our employees. I'll take a mover. That's Terry and Dirk. Any comments on the holiday closure? No. Okay. All in favor? Okay. And happy holidays to everyone. Seems kind of early for even thinking about it. But okay, so now we have a proposed Roslyn COVID Safe Start funding usage, and we need a motion to give staff some further direction on this. They've given us some great ideas, and we really need to have a good discussion here because there's a lot of opportunities here that we could do. So who wants to start us off with a motion to do something? And then we can discuss it. Dirk.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about putting it actually into a motion, but I think that providing some funds from a vulnerable person perspective to the opioid crisis, there may be an opportunity there to have a local education campaign or something. I'm not really aware of anything more than it's a severe issue. So it might be an opportunity for us to assist in that venue.
Okay, so opioid. I think we're going to get some ideas out, and then maybe we're going to be able to craft a motion out of some of this. Andy.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the same, that we probably need to have a discussion and then a motion will come. I like Dirk's idea. I don't know what the parameters of the spending is for these funds. If we're in a position to obviously support an adjoining community, most of the problems that are occurring right now when it comes to homelessness, opioid crisis, et cetera, are happening in Trail right now. And wonder if we're in a position to support some of the programming and the changes that you're trying to bring about down there. Yeah, that's kind of, so that would be a question for staff. Are we in a position to use some of these funds in support of other communities programs, potentially?
Well, we do have the Moms Stop the Harms group in town. They could do something locally here. Staff.
We'll go back and double check our bylaw, but I think that as long as it has some type of a COVID related use for it for vulnerable persons, I think there's a list of 5 criteria. So we will double check that, but it doesn't necessarily have to stay within our community. That is 100% sure, because we could give it to a local group that does things outside of our community that we think is important to the COVID related issues, and council has the discretion right now to allocate such funds as they deem to be required, as long as it's in the same criteria as in our bylaw, which is basically crafted up for the rules and regulations in regards to the COVID safe funding that we receive from the province. So I think we'd be all right, just depending on what it was exactly is that we're looking at.
Okay, well, we'll keep that one in mind, and we'll keep going with our discussion here. Janice. Muted. Still muted. Janice.
You probably filmed me saying that, know exactly what I said.
You
I was
did,
sure I
you-
clicked on the little microphone before I started. I know staff asked specifically for two different, for the two items. For the services for vulnerable persons, I had, my ideas were extension of the age-friendly coordinator contract, because of course she worked with some of our seniors who in some cases have become more isolated through COVID and have had less accessibility to programs. There's also another senior program that was started just before COVID hit called the Better at Home program. And the coordinator for that landed in her job and promptly had to figure out how to deliver groceries to seniors who couldn't go out because of the fear of the virus. So that might be, those were the two things I was thinking about for seniors. I was thinking about our internally, we have the recreation bursary, which is available to everyone. And it is specifically designed to help people with lower incomes. So that might be something. It's normally been funded completely with private donations, but maybe this is an opportunity for us to bump it up a little bit. Goes a long way in that particular bursary. And then the other one I had was in that particular services part was childcare spaces. And I have actually reached out to Carol DeRosa Hobbs at the United Church to see if, to send them the information from the province and see if they are interested in exploring that. And so that might be, give us an opportunity to partner with them to provide some more childcare services that would help people get out of vulnerable economic situations. And then so if we just want to talk about that first, then there was the other point, and of course my, there it is, my notes just closed, which was shortfalls for community groups or shortfalls. As you know, I mean, as someone who is a member of a community group, when our event was shut down, we just didn't have any costs. So we don't, you know, we didn't make the money to share with the community, but we also were not, it didn't leave us in a bad position. We just, you know, we didn't have those costs either. But as we move forward and a bunch of groups are starting to try and put on events, but we still have restrictions in place. And I'm thinking about things like events at the Miners Hall. So it could be the Follies, events, you know, Halloween type events. The Warriors are going to try and get some games going, and they're going to have a restricted amount of spectators that they can have. So that's going to affect them economically. You know, some sort of winter carnival process or program. Obviously, there may still be some restrictions there. And then, of course, you know, the Smokettes tournament, we're hopeful that by the end of February, there will be no restrictions. So we won't have to take extra steps there. But if there were, you know, anything that we could do to sort of alleviate that or increase our ability to help people through our program would be great. So maybe with, maybe as I haven't seen a bunch of groups that were, I haven't seen groups because they haven't been holding events that have been, you know, folding. They just, they're going to need help when they get started again. So maybe that's, you know, I know we haven't delved into this part of the fund very much, but that maybe that's because we haven't started reopening yet. And that as we move forward, we'll see a lot more opportunities. So my only guidance for staff would be, to watch for those opportunities. You know, if everyone agreed, we could make a motion about that and move forward with that.
Okay, I see Andy's got his hand up, but I'd like to hear from the others about their ideas first, and then we'll have a sort of a laundry list of ideas, and then perhaps we can narrow it down a little bit. So before I get to Andy again, I'd like to hear what the others have to say. Terry. Well, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I put my little shopping list together as well. And at the top of my list was also vulnerable populations and what could we do. I didn't have a specific target for that, but it seemed that during COVID that's a place. So that's on my list. We've talked about that enough. And the other one that was mentioned already was, yeah, recreation, a version of, I hate to call it the TRP, but how can we subsidize, are there any recreation subsidies that we might be able to augment with this fund to help low income or people who've been affected by COVID. The other thing, and this is just a broad stroke, but the Sustainability Commission has, historically at its startup had a significant budget and was able to tackle some bigger projects. And I wondered if they might be, and again, the link to COVID, I haven't made a hard connection there yet. However, sustainability being a word that covers everything, I wonder if there's an opportunity to reach back to them and say, through the lens of COVID recovery and restarting, is there something that you, a task force or some ideas that might come through there? So those were a couple of things I'd been thinking about.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, I didn't have any great new suggestions on services for vulnerable persons, although I did like Janice's list. That all seemed to make good sense to me. Regarding the shortfalls for community groups, I mean, I have knowledge of the community groups that I'm involved with, and most of them have had shortfalls of various types. I just don't think I have a comprehensive understanding of every group situation. Whether we tried to set up some, justifiable basis for how to prioritize amongst community groups, or whether, I mean, it's not a whole lot of money. I mean, maybe we're overthinking it and don't spend too much time getting into administration. We could just divvy it up amongst our key community groups as they've all got, I'm sure if we invited any of our groups, they could justify and come up with some laundry list of the ways in which their budget's been compromised. So, rather than getting too detailed over a relatively small amount of money, maybe we just get it out the door.
Okay, Chris.
The way I look at it is our own facilities are down over $100,000 over the last couple of years, just in loss of revenue and loss of people. And I'd love to see it focus on our own recovery there. We got a lot of things that we would really like to try doing again. And I like what Janice said about the events and the moving towards getting back into some of the things that bring our people outside to enjoy. And then I had the same thing. I had childcare and seniors as the vulnerable people in our community. And I'd love to see some of the money go back to or go to that.
Okay, before I circle around again and get Andy, I'll share the ideas I had. I'd like to see us allocate some money for emergency preparedness, like in case of heat and smoke emergencies, like what we had, like to give us the capacity to open a city building to accommodate seniors or kids so they can get out of the heat. We did a couple summers ago by opening the arena, excuse me, for kids to be able to play in there in a way that's out of the smoke. But unless we can allocate staff time for that, there's nobody there to sort of run that facility. I think I agree seniors are probably our most vulnerable, and I agreed with Janice that maybe an extension to the age-friendly contract could be, and I didn't look up the contract to know how far it goes or any of that, so it'd be something to look at. I know that seniors building, they've talked about they don't have good internet in there, and I have no idea what their circumstances are, whether there's a way we could help them there. I know there's some seniors groups that have a sort of a lending library of iPads, and they help seniors use the iPads, and then they lend them to seniors that don't have them to be able to use. That would be something, again, working with the age-friendly coordinator to see about that. And then, also just sort of being able to have more resources to create a database of like a phone tree. So if we get into a heat situation, there's a phone tree where people can call and call those vulnerable seniors, get a list of who they are and be able to call them as a shared phone tree kind of thing, just to check on people, just to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. I think that's important things to do. The other thing in terms of the groups, what I was thinking about is that we'd have to put some parameters around this, but we could put out sort of a call to our groups and say, okay, we've got some limited funds, and you could write us a letter and say where your shortfalls were, and maybe we can allocate some money, because some may have needs and some may not have any needs at all. So I'm not sure just giving everybody $20 is the right answer. I mean, we've got over 50 volunteer groups in town, so I think that we might need to triage that a bit. Let's see, anything else? No, those were the things I had. Okay, Andy, back to you, and then around to Janice again.
Just a couple of things that came to mind was two major events in the community: Fall Fair and the Winter Carnival. And I know those organizers in the past have challenged to have seed money to get themselves up and going. And let's hope that post-COVID that we'll be in a position to get those events back organized again. So they've always struggled, it seems, with funding at the start of organizing these events. So to me, those would be two likely and good worthy causes to support.
Okay, Janice.
Thanks, I managed to hit the button this time. Yeah, I agree with Andy. I mean, that's sort of part of I didn't have them specifically on my list, but that's sort of the reopening post-COVID assistance that we might be able to help with some. I did have a couple of, and you reminded me, Kathy, when you're talking about the seniors hall and the internet. I had a couple of, I was just thinking about, I copied down all the 5 points of things that we could do. And one of them is computer and other electronic technology costs to improve interconnectivity and virtual communications. I mean, we could certainly, install some fiber from our head end from up 3rd Avenue, up Washington, or out to the industrial park. That would certainly be something we could spend some money on. That's improving interconnectivity for sure. And, the installation of the speed reader signs. I know we've already approved that, and I know it's a worthy cause and it's in our budget and we've done all those things. But that certainly is communicating virtually to our community about how quickly they're driving. So, if we're sitting there looking at some funds thinking we don't have anywhere to put them, I'm pretty sure we can find some other opportunities.
I don't think we'll ever have trouble finding places to put money. There's so many needs in the community for sure. And there've been some really good ones brought up this evening for sure. So would anyone like to make a motion based on what this discussion has been, or something else if not on this discussion? Do you have any ideas? So it sounds like for vulnerable people. Okay, good. Janice, go ahead.
I'll give it a shot.
That's why I sent out the email ahead of time, guys. I wanted everybody to come with their thoughts.
Well, yeah, I'm actually going to go with the easier one, not the vulnerable people one. I'm going to go with the groups one for nonprofit groups. So revenue shortfalls for community groups. I'm going to make a motion that staff works with our community groups who hold events as they start to reopen as in post-COVID, and help them with any additional costs if they're still affected by restrictions.
Okay, that's pretty broad. I wonder if we need to allocate a certain amount of money or identify the group.
Well, we have an amount of money in the fund that we've already identified.
All right, so you're saying for that whole amount of that?
For that whole amount, that as we're moving through, yeah, if someone wants to second it, then I'll go back to it.
Okay. Andy, are you seconding?
I'll second it for discussion. Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, Andy. Yeah, so, I know it's not a very specific, motion, but I think that we haven't had a need to use those funds yet, but as and I see Christy's got her hand up, that's perfect. But as these groups start to become active again and start to hold events again, like fall fairs, like winter carnivals, like events at the Miners Hall, the Follies, et cetera, maybe the Film Fest. If they're facing restrictions or they're facing a dearth of volunteers or funding because they haven't had 2 years worth of events, you know, it would be a shame if we'd already asked everybody and dispersed the money and then we lost some of these events because, and there is no timeline to spend it. Although, you know, staff's report made it clear as time goes on, it's a little more difficult to link it to COVID, but certainly, you know, after 2 years of no fall fair, 2 years of no winter carnival, that's clearly because of COVID. When they start up again, it would be nice to be able to help them out. As Andy has pointed out, they do always struggle. And then, you know, some of the groups that do smaller events will need less assistance, but nonetheless may require some assistance to get going until we find whatever our new normal equilibrium is.
Okay, great. Christy.
Hi there. There's a couple suggestions I can make for the event side of things. One is we've talked about for a couple of years moving towards having an in-house part-time events coordinator that works alongside some of these groups to take some of the workload off of them. So they could work alongside with the Fall Fair and Golden City Days, Winter Carnival, a little bit with Film Fest and places like that. And that could help because I know volunteer burnout after COVID, trying to work their events through all those restrictions is a big problem for them. And then the other side is along the lines of the meeting that Janice and I had with the Warriors, talking about opening back up events in some of our facilities like the Warriors games. Baseline is 50% capacity for those events right now, but I'd like for the first few events that are new to the population being back in crowded spaces for them to start below 50 and scale up to 50 as the people and the security get used to that. So we could offer a percent scalable rental rates on Miners Hall and the arena when it's specifically for events according to the capacity that we can allow or suggest that they have.
So you're suggesting a lower capacity than what provincial health officer recommendations are going to be?
Just specifically with the Warriors, we had that conversation because they're going to be the first big event Roslin's going to have seen since the beginning of COVID, and their security is going to be responsible during the hockey game to disperse that 50% of the population in the facility so they don't all sit on the heated west side. It's not 50%, but all on one side. So it's a lot of work for their security. Standing around and chatting in the bar while they're getting their beers or in the common spaces is something that people are used to doing. So I had a digital meeting with Janice for the Smokettes tournament and with the Warriors. And we're all working together to try to ease the population back into these larger events again, because it's new for security, it's new for the population. People who have been quite nervous through the COVID, it's going to be a shock to them to be at these events and see large groups again. So my suggestion is to start with something that they can handle and manage and then scale up to the 50 as they can. And Warriors are more than happy to do that, but they will lose ticket sales for that. So making it more accessible for them to run their events. And the same thing with the Miners Hall. We have our CAC that don't pay for the facility, but they are still hiring acts and music to be in there. We have the Trail Arts Council using the facility coming up in the next week because their facility is under renovation. All of these guys are paying full rental fees for partial capacity events.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, now I see everybody's got their hands up and I'm not quite sure the order it came in. I'm hoping that it was Dirk, Stu, Janice, and Chris. That's the order I'm going in. Dirk.
Yeah, I'm less inclined to put funding towards things like Warriors. I know they're great. Smokettes, I think that's great. I think if we're going to put some of these funds forward for events, I think it should be the Fall Fair and Golden City Days or the Carnival, things that, you know, a city-wise we do. And the groups, it's not a whole lot of money. The groups can figure it out. I have a concern about hiring a part-time person at the city to help with event coordinators, because that's a short-term position that probably just never goes away. And again, I think the groups should be responsible. And then I have a concern about the just a blanket events. I don't want it to be first come, first serve, or do we wait until December and then we sit down with a massive matrix and vote on which events get how much of the funds and argue over who's not supposed to vote on it and how we average it? Just seems like it could be a schmozzle. So keeping it simple and to city specific events, I think would be my preference.
Okay, so you would vote against this motion and put another motion forward afterwards, is what I'm hearing you say, right?
Though, I mean, I'd have to try to write one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm giving you the heads up and the hint, just in case it comes to that. Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be clear about what I'm supporting and what I'm not. We were saying, can you help me, Janice, as far as how this potentially might work? We have a pool of money. We have $50,000 approximately sitting in a pile. How do which events and under what sort of process do am I supporting to give that out?
Yeah, sure. So I actually really liked what Christy said about the scalable fees, because what would actually happen is even though as a city we might be scaling the fees for the film festival or for RCAC or for the Warriors, the money will actually come out of the COVID funds and make up for that facility revenue loss. So what we're doing is we're giving the group a break, but we're not penalizing the facility because we have this fund that we can sort of top it up with. And I think that that's going to be something that goes on for a couple of years. I mean, I think that if, I know the bike event got canceled just because there was too many restrictions and it was impossible to do. But if it was a little more open, but there were some restrictions, then, we could find a way to support an event like that too. And I don't think it'll be big chunks of money for all these groups. It's going to be small chunks, but it helps everybody out, which I think was the point of getting the money in the first place.
I mean, that to that limited extent, that all seems totally fine to me. I'm just wondering, does that going to get through $50,000? And what about? And do we have? Is this open to applications? Can groups that have any community group in that is having an event that may be able to come up with some justifiable thing? What do they apply to Christy or is it just subsidizing facilities?
I think in my motion, I suggested that staff manage it. So it would be Christy and or staff. But
groups would perhaps outside just that limit. I mean, I appreciate the subsidizing the facilities, but are we giving money directly to groups because of whatever they claim?
I think the way Christy explained it is good. We're discounting the fees for the use of city facilities to the groups, yes, and then taking the money from the fund to break that even with the city. So we are giving them a discount, but we're not handing them a check.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That all sounds good to me. But are we doing anything else, or is that what we're doing?
Well, that's just this part of that's just this part, right?
Okay.
And it would cover. It could be recreation, it could be arts, it could be fall fairs, it could be winter carnivals, it could be, anything.
But I'm a little unclear on it too, because I get it when it's like a facility, like you've rented the arena and instead of 100% capacity, you have 50% capacity. So you're going to get some kind of a rebate on the rental. But what if it's not that? Like, how does that work for winter carnival, where they're not actually necessarily renting a facility? Sometimes they are, but sometimes some of their events have nothing to do with our facilities. They're still losing money because there's less people. How does that figure in?
Well, I mean, to be honest, as Stu says, I don't know the ins and outs of the financials for, the fall fair or for the winter carnival. I don't know if they make money, if they break even, if they normally have a grant that they get that they maybe haven't gotten. Or that even the size of their crowd makes a difference in how much revenue they get. but it does leave us, it does leave us with the opportunity to support them financially. In that particular case, it would be actually handing them a check, I would suspect, for their first opening after COVID.
Okay, I'm going to let staff comment on this before I go to Chris and then Dirk and then Terry.
Thanks, Mayor Moore. Just a quick note is that don't get hung up on the allocations that were predetermined back last year when we set up the initial conversations in regards to $50,000 here. They're just merely placeholders for ideas that we could further explore. So it's not that, I mean, that 50 might be 75 in one, and the other one that we budgeted 164 for is going to go down to 84.9. So we have 1.29 million, give or take. We use some of that already, so we're trying to dwindle this down, in an appropriate fashion based on what we can look at doing for our community groups or whatever council like to see done. And so I just want to caution that those numbers are just mostly there for high level budgeting for the time, so we could get those into our budget and kind of claim some of those costs back in the 2020 year, so we can kind of move forward with that. So I just wanted to kind of make that point.
Okay, great, thanks. Chris.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate both of the things that Christy said with regards to having an events coordinator. The community's been asking for an events coordinator for years, and as we move into the post-COVID times, we've lost all of the volunteers for these events that we've cherished over the years. And I'm talking about Winter Carnival and the Golden City Days and the Film Festival and Rekindle and various sports events. And we want to redo the market. That all comes with the need for more hands. So I appreciate the bringing somebody else on to the team to help with these local community events and these organizations. Either maybe it's just to find more volunteers to get it going again. And then topping up, I like the top up. That's a good thing too.
Okay, so right now the motion on the table does not include the part-time events coordinator. It's just money for the groups. So I'm going to go to Dirk and then Terry and then Andy. Dirk.
My turn. I think Brian both answered my question and caused a little bit of concern, because if we are looking at divvying up significant portions of what's left of the whatever $1 million, that is a much bigger game than I prepared for tonight. I anticipated that we would be discussing the $20,000 for assistance for nonprofits. That was what was in the chart. So if are we looking at like redistributing that money, or are we going with the 20,000 for that, 50 for the vulnerable? I mean, if those are just placeholders, then I'm not really prepared to vote on massive changes to that.
I mean, yes, they're placeholders, but there are some things that we have kind of committed to for the next couple of years out of those COVID restart recovery funds. So it's not the whole 1.2 million. We've already spent a bunch of it. So staff, do you want to add anything to that? I mean, maybe we're not going to be able to get this all done tonight. We're going to get some general parameters and send it.
Yeah, so really what we're looking for right now is that when we have a motion to kind of to review, like to sit down and think about this and review what council would like to get done. We're kind of running into, we're going to be doing a budget amendment coming up for 2021. That'll happen. So if we want to have some changes in regards to these particular items and about the vulnerable populations or the community group assists, or the ideas about subsidizing the wrap up for revenue loss of city facilities for events, the coordinator, those kind of things. The coordinator is more of like a longer term thing that we do for a year or something like that. But what we want to do is we want to start getting some better numbers for our placeholders. So when we put into our 2022-2025 financial plan, that we have a little bit more direction. And then if we have to look at creating a policy, and we're going to review a process on how we're going to divvy up funds to a community group, and when is that time going to happen, and when does it make sense to do that? you know, from a staff perspective, we're busy all the time, but in the same breath, from a community group, they're probably operating from a January to December budget. So we would want to try to get some information out to them sooner than not. That will impact our 2022 budget. So yeah, you have to look at everything all together. But I think that I don't think the intent from staff or for reviewing this from a council perspective tonight was to get all the answers tonight. It's just to kind of get some further direction. If we can hit some high level things right now and kind of facilitate some minor projects that we can look at to finalize in 2021, we would do that because the opportunity is here to present itself right now.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Terry.
Yeah, that was super helpful, Brian, because yeah, I find myself wanting for some sort of strategy directions. You know, let's and again, to restate what Brian said, I've heard conversation about events, support, vulnerable populations, etc. And I think so, Janice, as far as your motion goes, I'm happy to support something like that in the context of these are the other things that we need to think about as well. So I appreciate Brian's comments that we're just trying to give staff some broad direction here. And just before I get off, I do like the idea of a coordinator specifically to that. That makes a ton of sense to me. And again, it fits in a little bit with my earlier thoughts about the Sustainability Commission, where we had a paid coordinator and we got a lot of stuff done when you have somebody on payroll who's doing some of these things. So I like this idea of an events coordinator.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Andy.
Yeah, I can see how we could easily get into the weeds with all these micro decisions within it. And I like Brian's idea. I think we threw out a pile of ideas tonight, and rather than making specific motions on any one idea, I would just send it back to staff to, to take our ideas and brew with it and see what kind of report could come out that would give staff, would give us some direction in the future. I don't see us being able to make decisions tonight on all these little micro ideas. I don't know, that's kind of where I would think. Now, I seconded that motion just to get a discussion going, but again, I think that just, if that one is what we're talking about right now, I think we're probably much better off to put it within a large package of ideas and let it brew with staff and then come back to us. That's my idea.
I think we can do that. I mean, I think the gist of Janice's motion was that we're giving some general direction to staff to work with something with community groups and events. That's kind of what we're sort of general in that. And then we could maybe have another motion that says maybe give a little more direction about seniors issues, or we can do several motions. And I don't know if all these ideas that we just threw out, if that's sufficient for staff, or if they would like a little more detail than what we've provided so far, because we have kind of given the Chinese menu of ideas, and they're all really good ideas, but it's pretty broad. So staff, do you want to comment on that?
I think, yeah, we'll be able to work with that and craft some options. So definitely helpful.
Okay, that's good. All right, Dirk, you had your hand up. Did you put your hand down?
Oh, I did put it down. I think the only thing I thought is maybe we submit a priority to the city. Like we offset losses of facilities from a city side first, and then we offset extra costs for events second, and then vulnerable people third, or I don't know if we want to do that, but it sounds like Mike's quite happy with the list of ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we have some excellent staff, and I think we put out some really good ideas, and maybe let's let them take it and run with it at this point, see what they come back with. And in the meantime, we all need to be, thinking about it also. So maybe when we come back next time, we'll have a little more clarity on what our own priorities are. How does that sit with everyone? So, Stuart.
Yeah, I just struggle with the open-ended nature of the whole thing. It just seems like I don't really, it'd be helpful to me if we had some sort of criteria. Why are we doing this? What are our priorities? It seems like it could just be anything. And
Well, it
yeah.
could be anything, but if you look at the list of the things that we brought forward tonight, it's not like we said, okay, we got this priority, we're going to save the whales. I mean, it's like we have named things that we have, as a group, have come up with as priorities, whether it's community groups and events and seniors and childcare. And, we've come up with those things of all the things that you could address. I think we've sort of focused on those a little bit. Janice.
I was just going to say, I know that for Stuart, it's open-ended, and I know he doesn't like that, but it's, I don't like that. But we can't presume the needs that are going to come up. We do have these funds. They came from the province, and we can use them. We don't have a deadline to use them. They just have to be related to the items that were in the bylaw for it. So all these are good ideas. I think that for different groups and different groups, that the effects of COVID may be shorter or longer, or they might bounce back quickly, but we don't know that at this point.
I mean,
my motion essentially says hold the course.
If I was to think, what do I think the biggest need for the community in COVID is bringing us all together? And I like the idea of events, but I'd think we should actually, as soon as we have the opportunity to get together, we should be spending this money on having a really big party where we all get together and we actually connect, because we're all being so isolated. And I think that's what's missing. And if I was going to respond to COVID, I would be, that's what I would want to do.
But some of our events,
I want to get out there and connect in person with all the people in our community. And if that can be through one of these existing events, that's great. Or maybe we can, create some of our own, but whatever. We definitely not, and it's not just the viability of events. The lens that I see it through is that I want all of us to get out and connect together in person again.
And we do have vehicles for that, whether it's Golden City, depending on when COVID actually does end. It could be Canada Day, it could be Golden City Days, it could be.
Yeah, so we could potentially take some existing format and supercharge it into something that really was a really great community coming together.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that is a really good idea. That was one comment I was going to make about the part-time events coordinator. It feels to me like now, because we're still in the fourth wave of COVID, it's premature to start bringing in someone to do that events coordination when we can't really have events. I know it's been something that I think would be really useful in the community, but I don't really see it, the timing of it as ideal right now. Personally, that's my thoughts on that. Okay, I want to ask staff a question. Staff, did you get enough of the ideas that we were just throwing out, because we were throwing out them without a motion other than Janice's motion? Or do you need us all to write down our ideas and send them to you in an email afterwards?
I think that would be a preferred course of action. Then we can kind of create another report and then come back at a future date with and then actually get some specific motions.
Yeah, and to the broader concern, we'll at the next council meeting, we'll be presenting some of the preliminary thoughts and parameters around like the 5-year financial plan. So some of maybe the ambiguity that Councillor Spooner is feeling like we'll address in that broader discussion. So it's on the radar.
Okay, that's great. So I want to ask another question. Should we even vote on, should we even put forward Janice's motion, or should we just give you all this information and then you guys come back? We can vote this down, or we can do whatever with it. What would staff prefer?
Well, we have to deal with it because we do have a mover and a seconder. So I think that if you defeat it, it's going to come back in some other form in a bigger overall report. So I would suggest maybe we look at doing that.
Suggest we defeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is actually, we sort of turned this into a committee of the whole, which was not a terrible thing, because this is a really big and important question. So I will call the question on this, and if we want to just defeat it, and then we'll give staff all of our input and let them come back with something maybe tailored to kind of the priorities that we've set. How's that? Okay, so all in favor of the motion, and thank you, Janice, for actually making a motion. That was good. Okay, and opposed? Okay, So everyone knows, write down your ideas, send them to staff, and then we'll see where it goes from that. That was a great discussion. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now we've got one that's much more straightforward, and that is request for council decision on the 2022 Community Resiliency Investment, the CRI program grant application. And the recommendation is that we endorse it. And this is for our Fire Smart stuff, in addition to our usual Fire Smart stuff. Stuart is the mover and Andy is the seconder. Any discussion here? Do you want to make any comments?
Just that it's an important and becoming even more important issue for our community, and any funding we can get to make it better is we should pursue.
Yeah, and we are so lucky to have Don Mortimer in our community. I think we are just worlds ahead of a lot of other places. Okay, anything else? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Okay, great. Okay, now we have on the amended agenda, we have the tender for the Star Gulch project. Do I have a mover that we award the tender to Copcan, Chris and Janice? Chris, you want to comment on that? Okay, Janice?
Is the dam a facility?
Do we put our money in there or put our COVID recovery in there? Is that what you're saying?
The only comment I have.
That's good. Solid infrastructure. Okay, anyone else want to speak to this? I know it came in high, but we kind of forced to deal with it. Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we need to do it and we got some money, but my only question is, repairing rather than replacing the intake. Are we doing the right thing there? Should we be, how long is it going to last? Does it actually make sense from a fiscal perspective? Should we be funding the replacement now rather than just repairing it and having to do it again in a short amount of time? I presume somebody's given thought to all that, but I'd just like to make sure that that's actually being considered.
Okay, well, we'll hear from Scott on that.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Scott.
Yeah, we took a look at that. We know that the pipe itself is working. It's just that we don't have the valves working on that existing pipe. So we took a look at replacing it, thinking of a longevity sort of thing, and we're in that vicinity. When the amount came in too high, we took a look at the existing pipe, which we know work, and until we dig it down and find out everything, but it's really just a valve replacement. So we feel comfortable. But again, until this action is actually 100%, we don't know the condition of the pipe, but it has worked, right? So all the detail, the engineering, everybody's saying that this is the next step. That's what we're recommending.
Okay, so we could be in for a nasty surprise, but we hope not.
I hope not.
No, I hope not. Okay. Andy?
Just to ask Scott as well, and if I remember reading the report, the idea of pursuing other funding to do upgrades later. So, getting to the project done as much as possible now, and this repair will buy us some time. And then, but not to just drop the idea of replacing that pipe, but looking at future funding to support that.
Yeah, at the end of the project, we want to fulfill the province directive on the dam safety review and the dam, and make sure we can fill that right to the top, well, as we need to, and hopefully this will give us another 50 years. That's my game plan, and that's where we engineered to do. Again, the only problem we have here is the existing pipe condition. That's why the design that came in too high was just say replace the pipe and abandon that. But we're feeling pretty good about this. Again, we don't know until we do the final cammering, but as we all know, this process is a time-sensitive process, and it's been throughout the entire summer. That's why we didn't drain the entire pond during the summer. We needed to actually use that resource for our water needs. And yeah, this is where we're feeling pretty comfortable right now for your direction.
Andy?
I had one more question. I know that the fall that Red Mountain relies on the water in the Star Gulch Reservoir to draw and make snow, and that that's still a relatively new process. There's not going to be much water in that reservoir, by the looks of it, for I don't know how long.
Yeah, we have taken a look at that. It all depends on the weather, to be honest with you. Again, once this project is finished with, we start putting it back online. And again, if you, yeah, Ophir does feed into Star Gulch, so it can balance it out. It has to get to that level. But we have been and still will be in contact with Red Mountain to discuss, and they're aware of the potential.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of awarding? And no one opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we have our favorite budget update, Q3 fine report. No motions needed. It's just for information, but does anyone have questions or comments? Questions or comments, anybody? Okay. I had one on page 42. It taught, or it's probably not 42 anymore. That was in the original agenda. It mentioned still awaiting the museum grant. I'm pretty sure, unless there's other grants that I was unaware of, that's the one we didn't get, right? Is there any other grant outstanding on that project that we haven't heard about yet?
I think that they have a couple grant applications in, but the one that the ICIP one is the one that they did not get. But they have, I think they have some other ones in place as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a repatch dollars. I don't know what the appropriate word is. Like the second casting of the grant net that like looking for potentially receiving it in the second round of like reconsider projects.
Right. Okay, that's great. Thanks. And then the other thing I just want to comment, I really like the fact that finance is investigating about the refining our water billing and usage in alignment with the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure Standards. I think that's great. That's important work, and we're always looking to improve and modernize our corporation. And I think that's great. So that's good. And also, I really like the climate-related disclosures, that table that laid out all the steps and the different, the risks, opportunities into financial planning. So that's great. I like to see us move in that direction. So thank you for that. Okay, so next up is the corporate management work plan, another great report, Q3 progress report, and same thing, info, but comments or questions from staff. Yeah, everybody's thumbs up. We all like it. Okay, and just, yes, Andy.
Just wondering if, I know we've talked about this, it's always difficult. These reports are so awesome, and yet, vast majority of citizens never get a chance to read them or don't take the time to read them. Just through media highlighting this kind of a report, because it gives some idea of how busy our community is and how hardworking our staff are. And I know most people don't realize just everything that's going on. So I would like to encourage our media to pick this up and make a point of giving a link to our citizens and making it readable and accessible.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other comment I would make for council, because as you know, we're going into the last year of our term, so we won't be doing any major tweaking to our strategic plan. These are our priorities still for the rest of this term, and staff has been doing a great job working to implement those strategic objectives that we put in there and turning it into the management plan. So that's great. Okay, so nothing further there. I don't see any hands up. So now we have a request from correspondence, and this is from the Trail and Chamber District of Commerce. They want us to participate in their Think Local First 2021 campaign, which means putting up their banners around town. So do we want to do that? And if so, someone make a motion that we will put up their banners. I think they have, I forget, was it 10 or 15 banners, and we have a lot more stanchions around town. I would say we would put them in redstone and red, not just downtown, and intersperse them with our artistic banners that express the flavor of our town. It would be my suggestion for it. But okay, you want to make a motion to participate? Terry.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Any messaging around shopping local and thinking local is is a good thing. So I support this.
Okay, so you're making the motion that we support, and I think Janice was seconding it. Yeah, seconding it. Okay. Any further discussion? We'll leave it to staff's discretion about where they put them up. Okay, Janice, and then Stu.
Yeah, I liked what you said about interspersing them with the banners that we've always traditionally put up. You know, spreading them out. So, but also supporting our businesses and supporting our locals. I think the locals have done a great job. Now let's get.
You froze, but you froze with a smile on your face, so that's good.
Some of those people that are starting to travel to, think about purchasing things in Rossland and support.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit there, Janice, and you're still frozen. So I'm going to go to Stuart, and then I can switch back there if you unfreeze. Stuart.
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit challenged about working with the chamber. I've been talking with Tourism Roslin lately, and I'm aware that the chamber is withholding $50,000 in grant funding that was being held for and is owed to Tourism Roslin, and that the chamber is withholding that money and not providing any rationale and not entering into any attempt to resolve that issue. It all seems a bit odd to me, and I'm not really comfortable about supporting the chamber until some of these issues get resolved.
Yeah, the only comment I would make on that is that the issue with the chamber is with the chamber. The shop local thing is in support of our local businesses, just a kind of a push and something different to get them. So I think I agree with you. I think there's an issue down there that needs to be resolved for sure. I'm not sure not putting up the banners impacts the chamber one iota, but I'm not sure how much it will help our businesses either. But I think it's something that does show that we support the businesses. So, okay. Anyone else before I call the question on putting up the banners around our entire community, not just in downtown? Okay, but Stu, I appreciate your point. Okay, all in favor? And opposed? Okay. All right. Next we have, this is the Regional District of Mount Waddington requesting a donation to help rebuild the village of Lytton. And this was that we provide further direction. They are doing a $1 donation based on population. At the last census, our population was 3,727 people. So if we joined in this effort, that would be our contribution. Do I have a mover to either support or not this effort for Lytton? Dirk, are you making the motion?
I would support this.
Okay, and Janice, are you the seconder? Seconder, okay. And discussion, Dirk?
No, I think we're.
Oh no, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. Okay, yeah, I don't think he has, not saying anything. Janice?
Yeah, I'm not really sold on this one. I think it's a lovely thought. I think it's a great gesture. I think our tax dollars need to support our community first. Our residents have a lot of opportunities to support Lytton through other donations if they choose to. And, you know, there's insurance, and I know that Teal Cedar has committed to providing, you know, all the lumber they need to rebuild. So they do have some support. It's just, I'm just not comfortable sending our funds to another community when, you know, especially if we're ever even thinking about discussing service cuts and reductions because of cost constraints here. Supporting another community with tax dollars doesn't make sense to me. So,
okay, Stuart.
Yeah, I think there's lots of worthy causes out there when you head out into the wide world. I'm not saying this one isn't another worthy cause, but there's lots of them. But I don't think it's our job to adjudicate all the worthy causes out there in the world, and we should probably just stay in our lane.
Okay.
Spend our money in our community.
Andy.
Yeah, I hear you. Stay in the lane. That's been said many times. But here's an opportunity to support a community that was really devastated this summer. And if it was our community, I would hope that we would get adjoining and other communities in our province to support us. It's a small ask from each community, but it makes the cumulative, it will make a substantial difference. It is, you know, it shows solidarity, and more than anything, I think it reflects just, you know, that we care. And this community was hit hard. It's also a First Nations community, as well as there's a lot of First Nations population there too. And again, an opportunity to show that we do care. So I would support this motion forward.
Okay, other comments? Chris?
Yeah, you know, up until what Andy just said, I was of the same mind as kind of Janice and Stu, in that we have our own community to look towards to help whoever is vulnerable here. However, I appreciate what Andy just said, and I, you know, as much as I think we live in a beautiful place. I think that the beautiful place is really brought forth a little bit more by how our communities come together. So I'm going to put my hand up for this.
Okay, Dirk. We can't hear you. Put some right in the chat. Put something in the chat if you like, and I'll stall for time. Okay. The thing that I was going to say about it is I agree with Stu. Like, we need to stay in our lane. We need to take care of our own community. But this isn't sort of picking between one good cause and another. This is a community that got completely wiped off the face of the planet. And I agree with, you know, the need to sort of, you know, to help each other. This is a really unusual thing. You know, like if Vancouver got wiped off the face of the planet, you know, I mean, it's just such a small town with so few resources that I think it's, you know, I think it's important. Let me just see. Oh, and Dirk just wanted to say what Andy said. So, okay. So anybody, and Dirk, I have no idea why your sound isn't working, but I keep getting a little blue dot on your sweatshirt too. I don't know what that means. Okay, so I'm going to call the question unless anybody else wants to speak. All in favor of a small donation to Lytton? And opposed? Okay, so that carries. All right, thanks, guys. All right, we are to members' reports. I'm going to start with Andy because we really appreciate the fact he got his RDKB report in. Thank you very much. You have anything else to add besides that?
It was a busy month, and well, after July and August, not too many meetings, all of a sudden it just kind of goes crazy. So you can see there was lots going on. Any questions?
The only one I had was they're calling it the green ribbon and we call it the green link, and it's all the
I know, and that's going to be interesting to see how that gets resolved. I think that yeah, the greater portion of the trail is going to be from Moorfield to Fruitvale, obviously. So yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yeah, green ribbon was nice though. I didn't mind it.
I can live with that.
Yeah, I can too. Dirk, if we can't hear you, if you would just type your report into the chat, that would be good. So then it is in the record for us, and I can read it out if you have that. But I'm not going to call on you right now. I am going to call on Janice.
Yeah, I don't have too much for this meeting. We on September 22nd, I attended an economic development task force meeting. The chamber attended as our guest. The EDTF is planning to do another council update to come as a delegation to discuss their progress once they have finished or completed a review of the regional services provided by our partners. So, and where they think we might want to focus moving forward, or where they want to focus moving forward. And that's all I've got this time.
Okay, great. Stuart.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, Chris.
On the 16th, I attended the Tourism Rosslyn AGM. And no doubt that 2021 has definitely been a challenging time with a significant drop in revenues that resulted in a significant drop in expenses, which kind of hindered momentum, but allowed for an opportunity to pivot towards an increased focus on digital marketing. So it was a good meeting, and that's expanded and enhanced our reach and what is going to ultimately fuel our growth. On the 21st, the Heritage Management Group met on their quarterly meeting. We discussed collaboration opportunities with each stakeholder, that being Tourism Rossland and the museum, RCAC, the Arts Council, and the Heritage Management Group. So quarterly we meet to discuss collaboration opportunities. This quarter saw a discussion on co-op advertising through Tourism Rossland, and Andres at Tourism Rossland gave us an excellent presentation, opened up an opportunity for each entity to understand further how partnering with TR can benefit them in designing a custom marketing project and the benefits of cost sharing, along with hooking onto the Tourism Rossland marketing engine. I also, on the 24th, had an opportunity to spend the day with Larry Olson from the Ministry of Economic Development. And we discussed at length opportunities for our region and an economic development platform that could enhance local business and further expose our region to other markets. And then lastly, I just want to shout out to the community. The museum is looking to enhance their board with new members that are available to fill a couple of vacant spots. So if somebody's looking for some volunteerism opportunity, please pick up the phone for the museum. That's it for me.
Okay, I have a question for you about Larry Olson. Has he contacted or been in any kind of touch with our task force, economic development task force? I'm wondering if he has information that might be, okay, Janice is shaking her head, yes. Okay, good, all right. Let's see, Terry.
Okay, I had a request from the library, Stacy Borden at the library, and Stacy Lightborn just got back to me with an answer. So they want to put up a little free library on the outside, a little baby structure that will house books that people can come in and take a book, donate a book, and they need our approval to do that. So I expect we'll need a drawing, but I would like to make a motion right here just to get the ball rolling with those folks to agree in principle to approve that. Apparently our Stacy says that yeah, we need our nod from this group to give them approval to proceed. So if I may, I'd like to put a motion to allow the library to take first steps towards constructing a free library on the outside.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Janice seconds. Okay, any further discussion? Terry, I think you covered it. Janice, you have a comment? No, anybody have any comments? All right, all in favor? Great idea. Love those little libraries.
Yep, awesome.
Okay, great.
And yeah, the only thing I'll comment quickly on is the letters that have been coming to council from the Man Road subdivision. I've just been doing some learning on my own about process and our motion. So I've been busy with that in the background, but really nothing for this group. You guys, I'd lob that suggestion out to this group, and that's fine. We'll see what Highways does with our recommendation.
Yeah,
So
okay, yeah, we did have an opportunity to reconsider if staff hadn't already taken action, but once they've taken action on something we've done, then it's too late for that. So I don't know how seriously they'll take our concerns, but I think our concerns are valid. Okay, so let's see, Dirk, you looks like you still can't speak to us, right? Okay, that's all right. He says he doesn't have much. He's got changes in the SC. Matt Watkins is officially the chair, and some new members who we think they are Margot Lore, is that right, Lore? And Sarah Flood. So Sarah's keen to drive the market rebirth, so that's great. Okay, so what I've got a few things here. I spoke with community member India, who's on the call tonight, interested in getting a citizen group together to help the city achieve our Bear Smart community designation, and also the Wild Safe representative was there. We had a good good chat. There's a lot of energy with a number of people in the community to do the community part of it, which is great. I had a really interesting conversation with Fernie Mayor about the program, the pilot that they're running with grant funds from a foundation to pay private property owners to replace fruit trees, which I mentioned a little bit earlier this evening. We could investigate that for Roslyn as part of our plan going forward. The person I spoke to, person who's doing it, not the mayor, the city, their city has no money in it at all. But they thought the biologist guy thought that there might be interest in expanding the program for pilot number 2, which could be us potentially. I met with our CBT community liaison and talking about the need for the trust to help with seniors housing, but they don't have any new initiatives at this time. Then there was the IHA and Interior Mayor Zoom call. Of course, it's the same thing every time. Continue to encourage vaccinations, concern about hesitancy remains, and the difficulty with misinformation on the internet especially is just causing them all to pull their hair out, which is, they're pretty exhausted, as Terry I'm sure knows, so dealing with IH, pretty exhausted. I attended the Evening with David Suzuki event sponsored by the LCC DTS, and it was great. It was also sobering and very thoughtful. He's obviously a very good speaker. I attended the Zoom AGM for CBT, and there were over 200 people on the call, and there were lots of questions. I brought up seniors housing again and the need for it, but the trust does understand and is discussing its role, and also a suggestion about, maybe there's a way they can get involved and provide some assistance to private developers. My point was that municipalities don't have the capacity to build housing nor the inclination. So it has to come from somewhere else. And if the private sector isn't willing to do it, because a lot of it is more modest means, then there needs to be some help from somewhere. So anyway, they are thinking along those lines. So that's good. I attended the artisan market at the museum. It was small, but quite an enthusiastic crowd. I heard it was better and bigger on Saturday. I was there on Sunday. I attended a 2-day Zoom called Aging in the 21st Century. It was a seniors conference organized by COSCO, which is the Council of Senior Citizens Organization of BC. I was unfamiliar with that group, but it had some very interesting topics, some very interesting speakers and resources. Provincial ministers for health and housing were both there giving presentations, as was the interim opposition leader from the Liberals, who was also the seniors critic. There were various seniors advocates talking about various things. The Human Rights Commissioner was there, which was a really interesting talk about that. The Human Rights Commissioner looks about 12, but she has an incredible resume. She's quite an amazing woman. There were community groups on there. There were academics. There were a lot of things. I got a couple of links out of it that I shared with our age-friendly coordinator and a couple seniors and our rec manager that might be interesting. There was a Highway 3 destination development meeting, which I had sent the link around for you guys if anybody wanted to join. It was mostly tourism DMOs and the RDMOs and some elected people, some chamber folks along the Highway 3 corridor. There are about 22 participants, which is pretty good because there's like 29 communities along the way. So it was pretty good. And they're going to look to form a Highway 3 Tourism Alliance to move forward more of the key projects that were put out in the strategy, which also had been circulated a while ago. It's mostly good. The alliance is mostly going to be non-elected people. There may be some liaison. They're going to work closely with the Highway 3 Mayors and Chairs Coalition, which is good. And let's see. Oh, there's the inventory of signage, the condition of signage and sites and gaps along the way with some recommendations. There's going to be more recommendations coming forward. And the group, the tourism group had gotten a rural dividend grant money that funded that study. And it's really interesting to see, the condition of signs. If you look at it from the eye of a tourist coming across, it's like, well, where are the directional signs? What are the conditions they're in? What do they tell you about where you're going and how to get, there were a bunch of ideas put forward about how to get more people to come and visit. So that's good. So now they're creating a more targeted plan and building on this information. And actually there's still some grant money that they're going to be using for that. Wanted to say that the Josie, I don't know if you've heard this, but the Josie is joining the Marriott Autograph group of exclusive hotels. It does not mean a change in ownership. They're still owned by the William Cole Company. and Noble House is still the manager, but it's a way to get more marketing oomph and hopefully bring more people in. And the last thing is I've been in contact with the Roslyn Marina Society has been in contact with me because they are looking for a new nonprofit partner to help them manage the bottle bin. There's two things. They want some volunteer groups to help because it's a tremendous amount of work, but it's a huge moneymaker. It's been making like $2,500 a month recently. I think their thing was they made $51,000 over the 2 years that they've done it, but it's just like they're at capacity. So they need another volunteer group to step in and help. They also need to move it because it's located at RSS, which isn't the best location for a bunch of wine and beer bottles to be outside the kids' school. So I've just sent a big mass outpouring of this information. Ona Stanton made a really nice little PDF about what it is and the benefit your nonprofit group can get for it. And I sent that out to about 50 different nonprofit groups that I have the addresses for from when we did the Discover Roslyn event a couple of years ago. So hopefully there will be a group that steps forward that wants to help with managing that bin, because otherwise they're going to have to shut it down. And it's really too bad because that's a really great way to have a lot of money stay in our community for our community groups. So if anybody knows community groups that might be interested, and it'd be particularly important to have a group that has a fair chunk of volunteers because it is labor intensive. You know, Ona was not shy about saying that. And that is it. So we can Terry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Kathy, just back to the front end of your report when you were talking to Mayor Fernie about tree replacement, it tweaked something for me, and I was, I'm not sure this is the time or place, but I'll mention it so I get it off my chest. But the idea that if we're replacing fruit trees with another kind of tree ostensibly, and in conjunction with Fire Smart, that there may be some conifers throughout town, it might be of interest to have the city, come up with some strategic plans about species and things like that, and with the potential of doing, say, a group buy. I know that I've got a neighbor who mentioned this a while ago, and she said, "I'll pay for the tree. I've got a fruit tree. I'll pay for a replacement tree if there's a program and a way to get it." So there might be some advantages to a bit more of a strategic approach to tree replacement of both fruit and connies for Fire Smart.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And the thing I was thinking about, if we do end up trying to get involved in a program like this, I wanted to talk to Don Mortimer of Fire Smart and get that list. You know, we were talking about that with our tree replacement bylaw, is also to get that list of sort of approved Fire Smart trees, right? So that we are actually not creating a different kind of problem. And I have one more thing that actually was somebody on the street told me about today, or didn't tell me about, was suggesting that if we wanted to really go towards our 100% renewable plan, that we should put in a program like, there was the wood stove rebate thing. If you put out your dirty old wood stove and got a clean one, you got a bit of a rebate. And his suggestion was that we should put a rebate up, get a fund of money for a rebate for people who are willing to get rid of their gas-powered mowers and blowers and replace them with battery operated. And I thought that would be really something interesting. Perhaps the SC would want to be looking at that. The SC was the one that really got the city to shift over to water meters, and it could be a project they might want to start to work on too, and present a proposal to us. Anyway, so that is it for me. So a motion to adjourn, unless there's anything else. Janice everybody makes it. Motion to adjourn. Okay, thanks everybody. Good to see you all. Good night. Thanks staff.